This video is all about what I think is the best ability in the Helminth system that everyone must have in the game this year. I have based this on my experience using different Helminth builds for a couple of years, and it's based on how powerful the Helminth is, how versatile, and how valuable of an asset it is for a Warframe. Take note that this list is not in any particular order, and it doesn't mean that the first ability I have mentioned is the weakest, and the last is the strongest. Also, if you are looking for Helminth builds, I have linked my playlist on that in the pinned comment below. What I will showcase here is the importance of the ability and its usefulness, and if you want the actual builds, then go try out the playlist I have pinned in the comment section. Now, let's begin this video. First, let's talk about what I think is the most important in this list, and every player should have first, and that is Banshee's silence. Now there are a couple of uses for this subsume ability. The first one is increasing the damage of Ashblade Storm ability, as the finisher damage from Savage Silence can increase the clone's damage, and I think Silence is better than Radial Blind since it's a duration-based ability. It also can be used as a sort of defense for Warframes, especially those who have slow ability. The Savage Silence allows you to stun lock enemies for about 6 to 7 seconds, and it gets longer when you slow enemies down, but to be honest, these are not the main use of Silence. I advise you to have it first since it's the best way to level up your Warframes right now. All you need is to subsume this into your Warframe and replace his or her ability, then use the Savage Silence Augment, and then mod for max range with Primed Sure-Footed. If you don't have Primed Sure-Footed, then you can go with the normal Sure-Footed and the Cautious Shot mod into your primary. Then, use the Kuva to carpet bomb enemies in Telsto Saturn, in normal start chart by the way. The Savage Silence Augment does help proc the Stealth Affinity bonus, and every time you carpet bomb the enemies with your Kuva, you will gain tons of experience, allowing you to level up your Warframes in about 4 minutes solo, and even 2 minutes if you have a perfect run. The next would be Resonator. Why Squad Leader? It's just a ball. Well, it's a ball that can take away all aggro from enemies. In fact, you can slap Resonator in every Warframe, then add max range and lots of duration, plus the Conductor Augment, and you can totally do almost all missions in the game except for specific ones like spies or boss fights. Resonator is so broken in terms of survivability as it may not provide insane damage reduction or invulnerability, but it lets you be ignored by the enemies that you seems like an invisible man to them. Next it is Gloom. I would say that Resonator is better than Gloom, but only just like a 0.9999%. I say this because both have small problems but great in terms of survivability if you know how to use them well. The good part of Gloom is that it doesn't just provide a Warframe insane slow percentage, but it also allows you to regenerate your health per hit of your weapon or abilities. The only downside is, it drains a lot of energy, especially when there are tons of affected enemies. There are two ways that players build Gloom. One is the very short range with narrow-minded mods, so they can just use the healing part of the ability. A good example for this is Chroma, as Gloom makes Chroma a complete Warframe with the healing, and another is a high-range build to take advantage of the slow. This is usually for those Warframes that can are squishy and don't have any survivability skill. A Gloom Banshee is a very good example. You use Gloom to survive, while you spread your resonance all over the map. Also, tank Warframes are very able to maintain Gloom since you can slap the Hunter Adrenaline or Rage mod to them. It's also very good on those Warframes that can pull off intense power strength build like Hildryn, who doesn't need energy to cast abilities. Hildryn can attain the maximum slow percentage of Gloom, and all she needs to do is cast her Pillage to maintain Gloom for the whole duration of the mission. It also pairs well with those Warframes that already have slow, creeping terrifying Necros with Gloom is a good example, and Molecular Prime Nova with Gloom too. The slow of these abilities does stack with Gloom, creating an insane slow percentage. Why would I do that over Kill Squad Leader? Because it's fun watching enemies like statues. That's why. Next we talk about Pillage, the ability of Hildryn that gives not just one, but two benefits to the user. One is survivability, because every time you hit an enemy with shield or armor, you will gain a certain amount of shield. Keep hitting them and you can maintain your overshield, which pairs well with the adaptation mod for survivability. But that's not even the best part, as the best part is you can take advantage of their shield gating mechanic that allows you to be invincible for a short period after depleting all your shields. That gives you enough time to recast Pillage again. And the other benefit is stripping defense of the enemies. Every time enemies are hit with Pillage, their shields and armor will get lowered. It's almost a perfect survivability and debuff for your Warframe, but the only weakness of Pillage as a subsume ability is that it can't take advantage of its augment that lets you gain shield even if you are up against enemies, like the Infested, that don't have shield or armor most of the time. Next, we got Harrow's Condemn. To be honest with you, I wouldn't have included this on the list if it weren't been buffed at the last minute of the Harrow Prime arrival. The ability is so good right now because Digital Extremes enhanced the range of this ability to make it affect more target. It has now great crowd control potential that turns into survivability and can match the effectiveness of Pillage in a mission, since it also allows you to gain shield per enemy hit. The good thing about Condemn is that it don't require the enemy to have armor or shield. As long as you hit and bind enemy with Condemn, you will get shield for your Warframe. The only thing that makes Pillage great compared to Condemn now is its ability to strip armor and shields. But I still love Condemn now because of the wide range buff, and it's one of those abilities that can bind acolytes in place, making them easy target to kill. Moving on, we got Wisp Breach Surge ability. There was a time after and before the release of Helminth system, that players said that it's the Breach Surge meta back then. The ability does give out good crowd control, but its true power lies on its ability to deal insane scaling damage when paired with some Warframe abilities. Just take for example Garuda's ultimate ability. When you pair this with Breach Surge, the damage scales infinitely. The same goes with Sarin's Spores. However, I wouldn't suggest to take this ability first as your first subsume, since it's only good for those damage potentials. The scaling damage is what makes Breach Surge a good subsume ability, but sometimes, it takes a few seconds to reach those damage potentials that you prefer to just kill enemies with your weapons. Next is Valkytie's War Cry. If you want speed plus bonus armor percentage, then it's a no-brainer to use War Cry. The good part of this ability is its augment allows you to infinitely have the buff as long as you're killing enemies. I wouldn't have included this ability here if it was not that good in boosting your attack speed. Right now, there's no way you can have insane attack speed with only using mods since the cap has been reduced. Warcry along with its augment allows you to feel like the attack speed in this game was nerfed at all. Also, we got one of the newest abilities in this list, the Aqua Blades. With the Surging Blades augment, this ability can do wonders when subsumed to other Warframes. The damage is so insane that it's universally good to subsume to almost all Warframes. It pairs well with the Horror's Q-Brow's Stalk, and all you need to do is put in max duration build in your Warframe, then add power strength if you want. Use the Magus anomaly to group enemies and build up the damage counter of Aqua Blades, and then throw 100k to even 300k or more slash damage, which scales when it becomes bleed procs. In the process, you are invisible while Stalk is active, making it good in almost any Warframe combos. The only problem is, it doesn't nuke like other AoE bleed setup, but it kills faster knowing that the slash damage is insane. Next, we got Blood Altar, the best healing ability in the game, in my opinion, as it works on how much percentage of health you lost, compared to other abilities that gives you an X amount of health per second. If you are looking for an insane healing build in your Warframe, then look no further and subsume Blood Altar into your frame. The only problem is, it's not a wide AoE healing ability and only works in a specific radius. But it's no problem at all, as you can simply recast the ability whenever you want. Not to mention that if you cast 3 Blood Altars, then the intersection of those 3 will give you more health percentage per seconds. Now, we move on to the best grouping ability in the Helminth system, the Ensnare ability of Korra. I say this because Ensnare can be a great crowd control and grouping ability at the same time because of how far it can reach. Subsume abilities like Lava has been nerfed down in the Helminth system, and the good part of Ensnare is that you can recast it to an unaffected enemies to pull another group of targets. In my opinion, it's the best Helminth ability when it comes to group and nuke setups. Next, we got Eclipse ability. Mirage ability when it comes to power may have been toned down in the Helminth system, but it's still very powerful when you know the fact that Wisp with a crits or Exodia Contagion can reach 2 billion damage with Eclipse, when those Breach Surge sparks begins flying. I know you will also be hesitant, because of the fact that Eclipse has 2 forms, weapon damage buff and damage reduction. And, it's not guaranteed that you can get a specific buff because it works on light levels. If you are inside an area with lights, then you get the weapon damage buff. If it's dark, then you get the damage reduction. However, Digital Extremes did made some adjustment on their lightings that, for example, if you are in the plains of Eidolon and hunting Terry, you will still get the weapon damage buff if you are getting shinned down by the moon. It's reliable right now when it comes to damage boosting, but I still wish that the ability will be improved, and we get to choose between damage buff or damage reduction. Because if this happen, then Eclipse will have more potential Helminth combos in tanking department. If you are still hesitant with Eclipse, then there's Rhino's Roar that don't just buff weapon damage but also Warframe abilities. They work the same and they are damage buffing abilities, but in my opinion, Roar has more advantage when it comes to building slash-based combos. The bleed procs are more insane compared to using Eclipse, and I think this is the only advantage of Roar over Eclipse. Next, we have Smite. I know it's silly of me to include Oberon's Smite ability in this list, but let me explain briefly. I choose this ability because it's good with the Smite Infusion augment for Eidolon hunting. Most of the new Eidolon hunters don't have enough DPS on their weapons, so Smite is good in adding radiation damage to those weapons. But for the most part, where a player has the Necromesh Void Rai, or even the latest Nell Prime, then you won't need Smite Infusion at all in your build. I just added it here as an honorable mention since it helped me in those times wherein I don't have the needed parts to do solo runs smoothly while Eidolon hunting. Also, another honorable mention is Equinox's Rest and Rage ability. It's not exactly a broken ability like the others, but it's a good starting Helminth ability if you want to make a finisher setup in your Warframe, or just do a global crowd control. The night form of Equinox will put all enemies to sleep within a wide area, and they will be open to finishers. This is great when used with a Rapier Mecha Pulse setup, so that when you proc the slash during a Rapier finisher attack on a marked mecha target, the bleed will proc as an AoE. Again, this is just an honorable mention and you can use this as a fun combo. Moving, let's discuss the Broken Warframe's Xata's Whisper. This is a good ability for killing sentients with Mesa's Peacemaker, and in fact, a Peacemaker Xata's Whisper Mesa can do insane damage not just on sentients, but also on other enemies in the start chart. It is also extra lethal with Titania's Dexpixia, and also with Excalibur's Exalted Blade, and all these Xata's Whisper setup works wonder against Steel Path Acolyte enemies. The reason behind this is that, Xata's Whisper does not only give additional void damage to weapons, but it inflicts 1 extra hit per damage instance for as void damage, which then resets Sentient and Acolyte's damage resistance upon void status proc. It may be a simple ability when you read its description, but when used on the Warframes I have mentioned earlier, then it goes insane, especially if you compare it with galvanized mods. The next 2 abilities are for energy, and that is Spectro Rage and Dispensary. Now, Spectro Rage is great with the Spectro Siphon augment as it lets you gain energy per enemy kill inside the ability. It's a great pair with Grendel's Feast ability, but as you have heard, the Warframe has its Ormond augment now that lets you maintain Feast, making Spectro Siphon a less of a synergy for Grendel. However, it can be put into other Warframes if you think that you need energy maintenance, or you can use Protea's Dispensary. The ability don't just provide energy, but also health orbs and universal ammunition. It may sound perfect, but for some, its only use is for energy. Spectro Siphon setup may sound more useful and reliable, but when you think of it and equip the Equilibrium mod on a dispensary setup, then dispensary would be better in my opinion, since it can give you both energy and survivability when you pick up either health or energy orbs. But then again, they are just the same because Spectro Rage needs his augment while dispensary needs the Equilibrium mod. You will be spending 1 mod slot to get the full benefit of these Helminth abilities. Now, take note that all the things you hear on this video are based on my opinion, and if you have a favorite Warframe ability that I have not included in the list, then tell us why we should try it first. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on my next video. Squad Leader signing off.